Marcus wiped the sweat from his forehead with the back of his dishwater wrinkled hand, watching the last of the dinner rush plates disappear into the industrial washing machine. His shoulders ached from the 12-hour shift, but the real weight he carried was invisible, the crushing fear that tomorrow might be his daughter's last day with health insurance. At 8 years old, Emma needed her medications more than he needed his pride, and this minimum wage job at Romano's Italian kitchen was the thin thread holding their world together. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as Marcus scrubbed down the steel counters for the third time that evening. He'd learned that staying busy meant staying invisible, and staying invisible meant keeping this job just one more day. But as he heard Mr. Romano's heavy footsteps approaching the kitchen's back door, Marcus knew his careful balancing act was about to crumble. "Torres, we need to talk," came the gruff voice that had haunted Marcus's nightmares for weeks. Vincent Romano stood in the doorway, his expensive suit a stark contrast to the steam and grease of the kitchen. At 68, Romano had built his restaurant empire through ruthless efficiency, and Marcus had seen enough good people let go to know what was coming. "Yes, sir," Marcus replied, setting down his cleaning rag and steeling himself for the inevitable. He thought of Emma, probably asleep by now in their one-bedroom apartment, her inhaler on the nightstand beside her bed. How would he explain that Daddy couldn't afford her medicine anymore? But Romano didn't say what Marcus expected. Instead, the old man studied him with those calculating eyes that had intimidated suppliers and competitors for decades. "You've been here 8 months, Romano said slowly. Never missed a day, never complained, even when Jenkins was screaming about that broken plate incident that wasn't your fault." Marcus nodded, unsure where this was heading. "I just try to do my job, sir. That's what I'm talking about." Romano moved closer, lowering his voice. "Last month, when my granddaughter Sophia spilled that drink all over herself during her birthday party, you didn't just clean it up. You sat with her until she stopped crying. Made her laugh with those ridiculous soap bubble animals." The memory flooded back. 7-year-old Sophia, so much like Emma, had been mortified when her new dress got soaked with grape juice. Marcus couldn't help himself. He'd seen that same look of embarrassment on his daughter's face too many times. So he'd knelt down, made the girl smile, and turned a moment of childhood shame into wonder with simple dish soap in his hands. "Sir, Romano held up a hand. "I've been watching you, Torres. The way you helped Maria when her English wasn't good enough to understand the new health forms. How you always volunteer to work the holidays so the younger staff can be with their families. Hell, you even helped that homeless man who kept coming to our back door, giving him food when you thought no one was looking." Marcus felt heat rise in his cheeks. He'd thought he'd been discreet about Joe, the veteran who sometimes appeared by the dumpsters looking lost and hungry. He seemed like he needed help. "He did, and you gave it, even though it could have cost you your job." Romano's expression was unreadable. "That tells me everything I need to know about your character." The older man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an envelope. "What I'm about to tell you doesn't leave this kitchen. My lawyer contacted me today about something that happened 3 months ago. My sister, Elena Romano Castellano, passed away." Marcus had heard whispers about Romano's estranged sister, something about a falling out over the family business decades ago. She'd apparently built her own fortune in tech investments, living quietly in Seattle under her married name. "She left behind a very specific will," Romano continued, his voice taking on an odd tone. "Elena had been having me investigated, Torres. For months. She hired private investigators to watch not just me, but everyone who worked for me." The kitchen suddenly felt smaller, the air thicker. Marcus gripped the edge of the steel counter. "She was looking for something, you see. Someone who embodied what she called true leadership, not the kind that comes from boardrooms and business schools, but the kind that comes from here." Romano tapped his chest. "She wanted to find someone who led by example, who lifted others up without expecting recognition, who had integrity even when no one was watching." Marcus's heart hammered against his ribs. "I don't understand, sir." Romano's weathered face broke into a smile that transformed his entire demeanor. "My sister left her entire fortune, $240 million, to establish a foundation. But here's the kicker, Torres. She didn't leave it to me to run. She didn't leave it to some fancy Harvard MBA or Wall Street hotshot. The envelope rustled as Romano held it out. "She left it to you. The dishwasher who makes soap animals for crying children and feeds homeless veterans with his own money. Elena Romano Castellano named you, Marcus Torres, as the CEO and sole director of the Compassionate Leadership Foundation." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. The kitchen spun around him as he struggled to process what he'd just heard. That's impossible. There has to be some mistake." "No mistake. Her lawyers spent months verifying your identity, your character, your history." Elena's instructions were very specific. She wanted someone who had never asked for power but had proven worthy of it through countless small acts of kindness. With shaking hands, Marcus opened the envelope. The legal documents inside were dense with terminology he didn't understand, but certain phrases jumped out. Sole discretionary authority, annual salary of $500,000, mission to identify and support individuals who demonstrate extraordinary compassion and leadership in their communities. She created detailed profiles of everyone she investigated, Romano continued. "Yours was the only one that moved her to tears. The homeless veteran you helped. He was one of her investigators. The story about how you've been walking 2 hours each way to work because you sold your car to pay for your daughter's medical bills reached her personally." Marcus sank onto a nearby stool, the papers trembling in his grip. "Emma," he whispered, "your daughter will have the best healthcare money can buy," Romano said gently. "And more importantly, she'll grow up watching her father change the world, one act of kindness at a time." Tears blurred Marcus's vision as the impossible became real. For 8 months, he'd scrubbed dishes and cleaned floors, thinking he was barely surviving. But somehow, in the small moments when he'd simply tried to help another human being, he'd been building something far greater. "There's one condition," Romano added, his tone becoming serious again. "You have to quit working for me immediately. Elena's will stipulates that you begin your new role within 30 days. Marcus looked around the kitchen that had been his refuge and prison, then back at the man who had unknowingly sheltered him during the darkest period of his life. "Mr. Romano, call me Vincent," the old man interrupted with a chuckle. "Something tells me we're going to be working together in the future. Elena's foundation is going to need restaurant partners for its community programs, and I know just the place." As Marcus walked home that night, the legal papers safely tucked in his jacket pocket, he thought about the mysterious woman who had seen his heart when he'd thought it was invisible. Elena Romano Castellano had given him more than money. She'd given him proof that kindness was never wasted, that every small gesture mattered, that true leadership wasn't about commanding others but about serving them. When he quietly pushed open Emma's bedroom door, his daughter stirred and smiled sleepily. "How was work, Daddy?" Marcus knelt beside her bed, smoothing her hair with a hand that would never again smell of dish soap in desperate worry. "Different," he whispered. "Very different. Tomorrow, he would begin the overwhelming task of learning to run a foundation worth more than he could have imagined in a lifetime. But tonight, he was simply a father whose 8-year-old daughter could breathe easily, dream freely, and grow up knowing that sometimes, when you least expect it, the world recognizes the goodness you've carried in silence." The greatest promotion of his life had come not from ambition or networking, but from the simple decision to treat every person with dignity and compassion. Elena Romano Castellano had been watching, and in Marcus Torres, she had found exactly what she was looking for, a leader whose power came not from position, but from the size of his heart.